Okay, Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Kesubos Daf Lamed Vav, Kesubos 36. We're going to start on the bottom of Lamed Hey Amud Beis, 5 lines from the bottom, or 6 lines from the bottom, where the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, Arayos. You know what Arayos are usually, we think we know what that is these are the prohibited sexual relationships like we learned in the previous Mishnah, man and his sister, who's a kares penalty, or shnios l'arayos. Usually in Yevamos, when it says shnios l'arayos, it referred to secondary arayos, referred to those arayos who are rabbinically prohibited, like, for example, a man and his grandmother. So if a person assaults these women, ein lan lo kanas lo pitoy, they're not entitled to the kanas or the pitoy. They're not entitled to the money for ones or mafata, for seduction or assault. They're not entitled to the 50 silver coins. Why not? Presumably because of kamle b'daramine, that we give them the more severe penalty, and that's why they don't get the kanas, because the husband gets the more severe penalty. Amima'enes, the one who is a mima'enes, this is a girl who was married off by her mother or brother after her father died under the age of 12. She's entitled to reject the marriage. Well, afterwards, Ray Rashi understands it. If she rejects the marriage, and then she's assaulted, she doesn't get the money for the assault because she's presumably not a virgin. Tosfos says, no, it's referring to a case where she says she was assaulted in her marriage by her husband, who she now has rejected as her husband. So that's what Tosfos says the case is. Ilonis, this is a girl where the Gemara is going to say goes straight from Kitana, from a minor to a Bulgaris to an adult. So she has no period of Anara, no adolescence, which is where the biblical case of Anusa Mafuta apply. She also does not get lo kanas lo pitoy. She doesn't get the person who assaults her does not have to pay the 50 silver coins. And the last case here is Ayotzas Mishum Shemra. If a man divorces his wife because he said she was adulterous, and he claims that on the wedding night he discovered that she had been adulterous from the betrothal period. He also does not have to pay her. If somebody assaulted such a woman, he doesn't have to pay her. The Gemara is going to say, what are we referring to here? My arayos and my shnios arayos. So what is this case? The price says arayos or shnios arayos. What does that refer to? Ilema arayos, or the top of Hamid. If you want to say that arayos is arayos mamish, it's actually those prohibited sexual relationships as listed in Achremos, which get kares, and shnios. And when it says shnios arayos, what's that a reference to? That's a reference to divrei sofrim. That's a reference to the rabbinic prohibitions, like, for example, a man and his grandmother. Well, that doesn't make any sense because well, biblically speaking, he's allowed to marry his grandmother. So if he assaults her, he should have to pay the fine. Why is he getting out of it? So it must be, says the Gemara, El Arayos, when it says Arayos, that refers to Chayve Misos. That refers to Chayve Misos Bezdin. That refers to cases of people who are Chayve Misos Bezdin, like they're put to death by the court, like a man with his father's wife. And Shnios, and when it says Shnios Arayos, you don't pay the knas. That's Chayve Krisus. That's like a case of somebody who's a kares penalty, like a man and his sister. But if you were assaulted a woman who is a prohibition to, just a regular prohibition, like a mamzeres, then yeshlain kanas, then you do have to pay the penalty. Money, and this price is like. And we have to say that this price is like Shimon HaTimni, who says this position. Shimon HaTimni states that as long as the marriage is binding, even if it's a prohibited marriage, then you have to pay the knas. Ikadamri, alternatively, arayos are chayve misos bezdin. Arayos refers to both chayve misos bezdin and chayve krisus. It refers to both deaths by the court and the case of kares, i.e., the case of your father's wife and the case of your sister, for example. And shnios is chayve lavin, and the shnios refers to regular prohibitions, like, for example, mamzeres. None of those cases get the kinas, and this is consistent with the position of money Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe. This is consistent with the position of Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe on 29a, where we stated that Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe says that if the marriage is not kosher, means if you're not allowed to remain in the marriage, you do not pay the kinas. So it says the Gemara, lo kinas lo pitoy. This girl, this minor girl, rejected the marriage, but she had been married by her mother or brother. She does not get the kinas or the pitoy. If you assault her, you don't pay the 50 shekel. But that implies only because she's a me'anis, because we assume she was married as a minor, she doesn't get the kinas. But it implies hakatana ba'alma, that a regular minor girl, Isla, would get the kinas. We're asked the question, money, who is this position like? Who says that a regular katana would get the kinas? It must be that this is like the Rabbanan. This must be our brisa, which says that a katana would get kinas. It must be like the Rabbanan who say katana yeshla kinas, who says a minor girl does get a kinas. But it can't be because Ema Sefer. What is the concluding clause of the brisa? Says an islandess ein lo kinas lo pitoy, that an islandess girl does not get a kinas. And who is that like? Also, Rabbi Meir, that must follow the position of Rabbi Meir, who says Kitana Elo Kitanas. That why does an islandess not get a knas? Because a minor girl does not get a knas, and the islandess, Hamikat Nusa Yatzalavagir, she went straight from being a minor girl to being an adult, and that's why she doesn't get the knas. So Reisha follows the Rabbanan. The Reisha follows the position of the Rabbanan, who says that a minor girl does get a knas. And the Sefer Rabbi Meir and the concluding clause follows the position of Rabbi Meir, says a minor girl does not get a knas. Doesn't make sense to say that. Rabbi Meir. And if we say, oh, really, the whole brisa is Rabbi Meir who says the katana does not get a knas with mama'anes, but by mama'anes, what's the reason why we say that she doesn't get a knas? It's not to exclude the case of a katana who does get a knas, but really, mama'anes several Rabbi Yehuda, but mama'anes Rabbi Meir holds like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a girl can be mama'anes even while she's a nara, even while she is above a katana, and under certain circumstances. And so therefore it's saying mama'anes does not get a kinas, even if she's mama'anes while she's a nara, she does not get the kinas. So b'ma'anes Rabbi Meir savar like Rabbi Yehuda, but we can't say that, says the Gemara. Mi savar like, and Rabbi Meir really hold like Rabbi Yehuda? Vatanya, we learned in the brisa. Ad masaya bas mima'anes ad shetavi shtei saros. Rabbi Meir says a girl can only be mima'anes until such time as she grows 2 hairs, which means the beginning of her Nara period disqualifies her from being mima'anes. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says until she's filled with hair. So which means to say that she can be a mima'anes while she's a Nara, but Rabbi Meir disagrees with that position of Rabbi Yehuda. So Gemara says, okay, we must say that who is this price like Rabbi Yehuda? It must be that the price is like Rabbi Yehuda, but Katana Sarah like Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Yehuda says Mama'anes does not get a kinas, but that's referring even when she's a Nara. And by a minor girl, Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Meir that she does not get a kinas. Gemara says, Umi Savar, well, does Rabbi Yehuda really hold like Rabbi Meir that a katana does not get a kinas? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, so divrei Rabbi Meir. But we are going to say later on in our chapter that Rabbi Meir is the one who says a katana does not get a kinas. Mim Isa, and if it really Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Meir that a katana does not get a kinas, it should actually say Zu divrei Rabbi Meir for Rabbi Yehuda mi baile. It should say Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda both together say she does not get a kinas. So the Gemara says, okay, yeah, the author of this price is a third position. It's an anonymous person. We don't know who they are, but this Tana, Rabbi Meir b'chado, Paul b'chado. He holds like Rabbi Meir with respect to the fact that a katana does not get a kinas, and he argues with Rabbi Meir, whereas he says that a girl can be mima'anes while she's a nara. Rifraf gives a different answer. Rifram says, Amar Maimin Ma'anes. When it says Ma'anes is not going to knas, that's actually referring to a kintana. It's not actually referring to Ma'anes. It says a girl who's within the age of where she's able to be Ma'anes, i.e., a minor girl. She's the one who does not get a knas. The Gemara says, but then listen, Kitana, why are you going backwards and saying Ma'anis? Say a katana does not get a kanas. The Gemara says, indeed, kasha, and it is indeed difficult. That is a difficulty with Rifram's approach. Then it says, Ionis ein lo kanas v'lo pitoy. And Ionis does not have a kanas or pitoy. Ionis, you do not get kanas or pitoy. So Viraminu, is this really the case that an Ionis is not able, you don't pay the kanas to an Ionis? And we have a contradictory source. What's the contradiction? It says the deaf mute, the insane, or the ionis, yeshlan kanas. They do get the kanas. They do get the kanas. The yeshlan tanas basulim, and they do get the tanas basulim. What's tanas basulim? If the husband claims, "I marry you expecting you to be a virgin, and now I see you're not a virgin, and therefore he wants to lower the cost of the ksuba. He wants to lower the price of the ksuba." So according to this, the ionis has a kanas, and also they can make a claim, we were expecting you to be a virgin. So the our brisa says an ionis does not get a kanas, but we have a brisa that says an ionis does get a kanas, presumably because we would say, according to one, it says she does not get a kanas, it's because she was never a katana. But the one that says she does get a kanas is because the katana gets a kanas. So the Gemara explains, my rumia, what kind of question is this? Haravi Meir, the one that says an ionis does not get a kanas. So the one that says that the ionis does not get a kanas, hold on one second. That's Rav Meir, who says that a katana does not get a kanas, whereas the one that says that she does get a kanas, Haravanan, who says that an ionis does get a kanas. The Gemara says, well, that's such an obvious answer that we flipped the question into Karila, Mike Arwa. What was the difficulty that is the one who asked the question? What was even the challenge? It's such an obvious question. Gemara explains, no, the difficulty was Mishum de Islay Mirma Achrisa, because he wanted to bring the other part of the brisa, and he wanted to raise a question against it from a third source. What's the third source? That was the part that was very interesting to us. We say that the chareshes, the deaf mute, the insane, the bulgaris, and the mukas eitz, you can never claim in any of those cases, I was expecting you to be a virgin. There's a presumptive status that you can't make that claim of tanas basulim to lower ksuba. But a summa va'ionis, but the summa and the ionis, yeshlan tanas basulim. But the summa and the ionis, you can't make the claim that we are expecting them to be a virgin. Sumcha says, Mishum Rabbi Meir. Sumcha says in the name of Rabbi Meir. Sumcha says in the name of Rabbi Meir. Ein la tanas basulim. Sumcha says in the name of Rabbi Meir, we cannot make the claim that we were expecting them to be a basulim in those cases. So Amar Rav Sheshes lo kasher. Rav Sheshes says this is not a difficulty. What's the apparent difficulty here? So the Gemara is we see from this brisa that somebody who marries a chareshes or a shota cannot claim this case of tanas basulim, and this contradicts that which we learned in the earlier brisa that you can say by a chareshes or a shota, I was that you can say that. So in this brisa we say that the chareshes or the shota has no tanas basulim. But when the first source we cited, this first brisa, we say the chareshes to the shota, we can say I was expecting them to be tanas basulim. So how do we explain the distinction? So Amar Sheshes lo kasha, Harav Gamliel, Harav Yeshua. This goes back to the case which we had on Daf Yomi, where Rabbi Gamliel says that if in a circumstance where the woman on the wedding night, the husband says, I was expecting you to be a virgin, and now I see it's not. And she says, Misha Rastani Nanasti. She says, I was assaulted after I was already betrothed. So Rabbi Gamliel believes, so Rabbi Yeshua does not. And so therefore, therefore, in this case also, Rabbi Gamliel says you can't make the claim against the Charesh or the Sota because she could have said, Misharastani Nanasti. After I was betrothed, I was assaulted. Gemara says, well, Amer the Shamas Rabbi Gamliel Hechad the Katana E. Maybe Rabbi Gamliel would say, if she herself makes the claim, we believe her. But the Lo Katana E, but where she herself does not make the claim, Mi Shamaslay, do we really believe her? Gemara says, yes. Since Rabbi Gamliel says we believe her, if she says Erastani Nanasti, then could go and zoo. Then also in this case where she's a Charashes, she's a deaf mute, then we're going to say, Petach Picha Ilemhu. We're going to open up the mouth for the woman who is mute, who can't speak, and we're going to speak on her behalf. So, fine. And so therefore, Rabbi Gamliel says that you cannot make a claim of Tanas Basulim against the Charashes or a Shota, because we can make the claim on her behalf. So the Gemara says, V'amarav, but doesn't, so he said, Belgaris ain't la Tanas Basulim. If the girl is an adult, you cannot make a claim of a Tanas Basulim against her because there's other reasons why her Basula, why her hymen has evaporated. So the Gemara says, is that really the case? So Amarav, but didn't we learn in the Rav taught, Belgaris knows in the Laila Rishon, that the Bilgaris, we give her the whole first night to be with her husband, and because we say all that the blood on that first night is dam basulim, and so therefore, since all the blood is dam basulim, we assume that she has blood on her wedding night. If that's the case, why can't you make a claim of tanas basulim against the Bilgaris? So the Gemara says, okay, on top of Amavavam Abayz, either Katain Tanas Damim Hachinami. If he was making a claim, oh yeah, you don't have blood, that indeed would be a valid claim. And he could be able to say, I was expecting blood and you don't have blood, and so therefore I want to lower the ksuba. But what are we talking about here? The Katayin Tanas Pesach Pasuach. No, what's his claim here? Here he's claiming that your Pesach, your basically your vagina was more open than I was expecting it. And that we say that's not a valid claim against the Bulgaris, because as she gets older, as she matures, then it becomes more pasuach. So Sumcha says, Mishum Rabbi Meir, Suma Ela Tanas Basulim. Sumcha says that a Suma, this blind girl, you can't make a Tanas Basulim against her. My time with the Sumcha. So Rabbi Zerim Nation Echbetes Al Gabe Karaka. Because what happened was, Rabbi Zerim, so what's the reason for Sumcha? Rabbi Zerim says because the reason why you can't make a claim of Tanas Basulim against the Suma is because she falls down on the ground and thereby she breaks her Basula, she breaks her hymen. So the Gemara says, I don't understand that. Everybody falls on the ground. Why specifically the Suma do you have no complaint against her? Gemara says, because everybody else falls down and they see it and then they show their mother, and everybody says that this is not that they have no basula anymore. And they tell the people when they get married, look, my basula is not intact. And so therefore, if you don't tell him, you're tricking them. Vizo, but whereas this blind girl ain't a roav, ain't a maroima, she doesn't see, she doesn't show her mother. And the person who marries her us to assume that indeed she has fallen down. And so therefore, nobody has said, oh, she has her basula, because we have to assume she doesn't have her basula because she's blind. And so therefore, it's not a mistake. And whereas the one who goes out because of a shemra, then she also, if you assault her, she does not get the knas. So the Gemara says, wait 1 second. What do you mean the girl was kicked out of the marriage because we assume that she was adulterous? She was adulterous from when she was betrothed. She's supposed to be stoned. What do you mean she doesn't get an assault? She doesn't get money for being assaulted. So Amar Rav Sheshes, Rav Sheshes says this is what we're referring to. It says Rav Sheshes, somebody who says Rav Sheshes, somebody who had a rumor went out about her while she was a young girl, that she was mizana, that she was no longer a virgin. Well, now that she's assaulted, she does not get knas or pitoy. She doesn't get the money. So Amar Papa, Shema Mina, Papa says we learn from here, that we learn from here that if there is a bad document, we can't use it to collect. So what's the scenario that there's a bad document that we can't collect with? If we say that it's a document that the rumor went out about it that's forged, the kavasa hacha, and it's similar to the case over here, the nafakala kala dezana, that the rumor went out about her that she was adulterous. It can't be. Amarava yatzala shem mizana be'ir, but doesn't Rava say that if there was a rumor that she was mizana in the city, in choshala, we don't have to be concerned about it. So it must be that what's the scenario we're talking about here is the asube tray that two witnesses came. Amri Lididao Tavatani Bisura. She came to us and she tried to be mizana with us. The kavasa hacha, and what's the case with the contract? The asube tray Amru Lididao Amru Zaifuli, and the two witnesses come here and they said that this man came to us and told us to forge a document. So in those cases, we're not allowed to collect, and also she doesn't collect the money. The Gemara says, but Bishlam Hasam, it makes sense over there. Shchichi Perutzin, it makes sense over there in the case of the woman who's adulterous. There, we're going to say, since there are witnesses that she was looking for somebody to be mizana with her, for sure she found, because there's a lot of people who are unfortunately weak in this area, and so therefore we're not going to give her the money for being assaulted because there's a presumption that she's not a basula. But in this case, he in this case there's a presumption that he wants to forge a document, but all of Israel is going to forge a document. There's two witnesses on this document. The Gemara says no. No, in this case also, since he's looking for somebody to forge a document, we'll just assume that he's the one who forged it. In the end, we'll assume he's the one who forged it, and so therefore, since he's the one who forged it, we're going to say that he doesn't get to collect from it. There's that possibility. So now we start the next chapter. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, this is the opposite of the previous Mishnah, which says these are the ones who have a kinas. These are the women who collect the penalty for being assaulted. These are the ones who do not. Habala Kiores, a person who is with a convert, a woman who converted, Bala Shvuya, because they're not going to get the kinas because we're talking about a case where they converted after the age of 3, so we no longer have the presumptive status that they're a basula. So these are the ones who do not get the kinas. A captured woman or a maid who is redeemed, and all these cases where they converted or they were freed above the age of 3. They don't get the kinas because we no longer assume that they were a virgin. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shavuya shenifte sarei b'kedusha. So Rabbi Yehuda says if there was a captured woman who was redeemed, we're going to assume she's in her state of kedusha. And afal pisha gedoa, even though she is an adult, we're going to assume she retained her status of purity. So then the Mishnah says, Abal bitov abas bitov abas bino. Somebody who has relations with their daughter, this is death by a heavenly court, not by a human court. Misa b'dei adam. Somebody has relations with their daughter, with their daughter's daughter, with their son's daughter, Abbas Ishto, his wife's daughter, Abbas Bana, his daughter's daughter, his son's daughter, Abbas Bita, his daughter's daughter, Elan Knas. In those cases, they do not get the Knas, but Meshim Eschaya Benavsho, because they're put to death by the court. Shamisasam b'dei bezdin, because they're put to death by the court. And anyone who's put to death by the court, we do not pay them. We do not pay them the kanas. If there will not be an ason, if they will not be put to death, if there will not be a case of a death, then you have to pay the penalty. Meaning to say, but if there's a death, if you're liable for death, you do not pay the penalty. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Dosa, I'm Davar Echad. So this statement of Rabbi Yehuda, that we assume in a case where she was captured that she remained in her state of purity, she wasn't assaulted. This is the same teaching as Rabbi Dosa. They said the same thing. Rabbi Yehuda Adamran, Rabbi Yehuda, that which we just said. And what does Rabbi Dosa say? Because Rabbi Dosa, the Tanya, he said, Shavuya Ochelas Betruma. Rabbi Dosa is on the position that a captured girl, if she was the daughter of a Kohen or married to a Kohen, we assume she wasn't assaulted because she's still allowed to eat from the Truma. So that's the position of different Rabbi Dosa. Amar Rabbi Dosa, because Rabbi Dosa says, Zechima Asala Aravi Alaz. He says, what do you think this person, this Arab who captured her, he never actually had intercourse with her to disqualify her. What he did was he molested her, which is a terrible thing, but it doesn't disqualify her from being considered a zone now, and therefore not being healthy from the truma. He touched her in places that were inappropriate, but he didn't actually have intercourse with her, so therefore she's not disqualified. Amarabba, Damalohi. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Dosa, says the Rabbah, are actually not saying the same thing. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say his position here? Because we don't want the sinner to benefit. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, pay the knas. Don't assume that she was violated. But in the case of the truma, maybe Karabanan Tzvirle, maybe he holds like the Rabbanan that we assume she was violated and she can't eat from the truma. So in that case, by the truma, because in that case, maybe he's going to hold like there's no concern about chote nisker, about the sinner benefiting. Or inami, or alternatively, adkan will come Rabbi Dosa. So maybe Rabbi Dosa says his position there, but truma the Rabbanan, because it's truma that is rabbinic, because we're talking about truma nowadays, which is rabbinic, or we're talking about rabbinic truma. Aval kanas, but this case of a kanas is a diaraisa to pay the penalty. Biblical. Maybe Karabanan Tzvirle, maybe since we have to assume that she was violated. Amrei Abaye, so Abaye says, Utami de Rabbi Yehuda, hacha shaloyeh chotin nisker. He says, is the reason for Rabbi Yehuda really that we don't want the sinner to benefit, and so therefore we're going to make him pay the kanas. Vatanya, but don't we have a Bryce? And the Bryce says, Rabbi Yehuda said, Shavuya shenishbeis, if there was. Okay, you know what? We'll have to stop here. Pick this up, God willing. We'll resume this later, but for now we'll stop. If anybody has any questions.